Anyway, we have Hosni Mubarak still in prison. Doesn't your heart bleed for him? But you have the military back in power. That doesn't mean that what happened in Egypt wasn't inspiring. It doesn't mean that the masses didn't, in that sense, gain a sense of their own power, but quite clearly that's been dissipated. I mean, Trotsky was the one, I think, in terms of an analogy, put it best, didn't he? When he was talking about Russia, he talked about spontaneous anger, and unless it was harnessed, in some sort of mechanism, unless you have a equivalent, I suppose it gives away the time, a steam engine, it will just be dissipated. And that's what's happened in Egypt. The anger was quite clearly there, but the anger didn't have institutions, didn't have a party of the working class to direct it, to time it, and we get the result that we get. Okay, very quick comment on Ferguson and St. Louis, Missouri. What's been going on in the United States? As I understand it, the policeman involved in the shooting of Michael Brown has now resigned from the police force. I don't know what happened, but it's interesting. I was reading an article in the Financial Times, which really was quite an eye-opener to me. It's not that Ferguson is so poor. It is poor, but it's not that it's so poor. It's not that there's been, the movement of richer people out. It's not that it's got the highest unemployment. Unemployment is high. It's got a bigger black population than it had in 1980, but it's not the highest. What's interesting, actually, about Ferguson and other such towns is the impoverishment of the local authorities. What's happened is, I presume since the time of Clinton, I'm not quite sure, but remember Clinton did this right turn, mid 4 years in sort of type idea. He came to a deal with the Republicans, cut sort of idea. And amongst that was cutting local government income, apparently. And what's happened in American towns now is that the local authorities are making up literal income on the basis of using the local police force to exact fines off people. So in Ferguson, apparently, if you're black, on average per year, you are fined 3 times. I mean, I don't know how many times you get, I mean, it sounds more like Peter with road traffic stuff, but on average, 3 times a year. And this apparently isn't about law and order. This is income generation. The accusations in terms of local authorities that the reason why they're imposing weird parking is just to generate income. That is actually what they're doing in America. People are being stopped for drugs, traffic offences, for this, that or the other, and fined in order to extract money off them. And we also have, again, this is more well known, I didn't know that one. What we also have is a militarised police force as a result of American military hardware being sold off. So the police force in Ferguson go around in armoured vehicles. You can imagine it. And under those circumstances, these guys are completely tooled up as if they're fighting in Afghanistan or Iraq, and they're confronting relatively minor civil disturbance. It's no surprise that the thing becomes escalated. But I think what we need to be emphasising, I can't remember who it is, James will tell me who it is. There's a very famous basketball player I haven't heard of, shout up.
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Jabbar. Right, I had never even heard of him. It shows my absolute ignorance. Apparently he's the most famous high-scoring American basketball player ever, and everyone should have heard of him. I haven't heard of him at all. But he was making a point which was interesting, which concur with my view, that often what happens in America is people see class through the spectacles of colour. In other words, what we have in Ferguson, yes, is a race question. I don't deny that. If you look at the police force who were on patrol or on duty that night when Michael Brown was shot down, I think it's something like there was 54 policemen or police people on duty, 51 of who were white in an overwhelmingly black area. So yes, but it's also class, and it was interesting that some people in America on these demonstrations that are occurring around. So the thing about Obama is he might be black, at least white people will call him black, but he's a white man in a suit. Well, actually, what I would say, he's a rich man in a suit. How did he become president? Well, he had to be rich, and he had to have connections with the rich. His agenda was an agenda of the plutocracy in America, which dominates both the Democrat Party and the Republican Party. And indeed, you could say that the problem that some of members of the bourgeoisie have with the Republican Party is it isn't sufficiently dominated by the plutocracy where the Democrats are. You know, i.e. the Tea Party is more sort of wild, a bit far out of control from the point of view of the plutocracy, a bit like a UKIP in the United States, where the Democrats are on message, at least with the at least sufficient of the ultra rich. Moving on quickly, just very quick comment on oil prices, very important. Brent oil from the North Sea, which is meant to be the benchmark oil price, has gone down to, at least last night, $71.25. That's a 40% drop. Why has there been a 40% drop? Two main factors, you could say. First of all, US shale oil. Huge industrial revolution in the United States, a lot of talk, some of it empty, but nevertheless there's truth there, of reshoring industry back to the United States, i.e. energy prices in the United States have gone down. Isn't America now maybe even just about a net exporter, perhaps? I don't know. But it's certainly not anymore dependent on outside sources in the way it was 20, 30, 40 years ago. So a new supply of oil has come on stream. Meanwhile, the Eurozone, Europe in other words, is in stagnation to all intents and purposes. It goes up a bit, it goes down a bit, but that's the general picture. So no, how should I put it, pattern of rapid expansion. And in Asia, Japan in stagnation, it's been in stagnation ages. China visibly slowing down, India visibly slowing down, therefore less demand for oil in a situation where there's more supply of oil. And what's new about this particular term is instead of Saudi Arabia cutting production, which would be their normal response, what they're doing is keeping production going. That's good news for China, good news for the United States. One would, let's leave that one open for the moment. Good news for India, good news for China, good news for Japan, because their imports prices aren't going up, they're going down. Who knows about the United States? Because one of the reasons that Saudi Arabia is taking this decision, and it is Saudi Arabia taking the lead in OPEC, could be in order to put the marginal shale oil production out of business. Shale oil is not the same as Saudi Arabian oil or North Sea oil. It's much shorter term. Okay, it's a marginal, wells. Lots of these things are. So you get statements by top executives where we were about to have an oil boom in northern Canada, in the Arctic, and all the rest of it. You now have statements saying not going to see oil in the Arctic, oil drilling in the Arctic on a commercial scale in my lifetime. I presume he wasn't 95, the guy that was speaking. So Saudi Arabia is responding on the basis, let the market decide who stays in business and who goes out of business. Saudi Arabia hasn't got any notable popular pressure on it. It's awash with money. On the other hand, Venezuela, Iraq, Iran, very different circumstances. You can imagine all sorts of cracks opening up in the regime in Iran. You can imagine the same in Iraq. You can imagine the same in Venezuela, all sorts of different politics, but oil reliant on high oil prices as opposed to Saudi Arabia, which hasn't got that necessity. Okay. which also does mean, by the way, that it's much less likely that Britain will see this mass turn to shale oil or gas production. Doesn't mean it won't happen, but quite clearly the incentive is being taken away every time fracking, every time oil price goes down. Okay, very quickly now, just a couple of other points. Okay. Safe spaces. We've seen the SWP victorious, saving themselves from being driven off the campus in Edinburgh and Sussex, failing to do it in Goldsmiths, thanks to former members of the Commune. The SWP has been banned from campus. Apparently they constitute some sort of danger to people's physical and mental safety. I never experienced it myself. But also another one, I know you have, but that's inside Marxism. We've had comrades beaten up in Marxism. That's right, absolutely right. Yes, that's true. But there's another example of this safe spaces craziness, in my view, from the University of East Anglia, where UKIP, the local UKIP candidate, is being banned, and they've been banned it for, you guess it already, because students must be able to feel safe, respected and secure. I mean, the idea of a UKIP speaker turning up on campus and you going, well, because I'm from Poland, I just don't buy it. I really don't. And it's the wrong way for the left to go. The left needs to confront UKIP with ideas. We need to defeat these people with our ideas, because our ideas are better. Our ideas can take on the right, and we don't need cotton wooling. We don't want students. We don't want people treated as children, right? And I find it deeply problematic when you hear comrades in Left Unity who bracket together women, right, and children as who need to be protected. Well, if there's a 5-year-old, I'll hold their hand and get them to cross the road. Right, come on now, right, now be careful. What do we do when we get to the road? We look both ways, and you look after children. Women are equal, right? And we got a letter in this week's paper from a comrade who obviously listens to these broadcasts, who listened to my little take on, is it Raisa Resna? Lara Resna? Anyway, I can't remember her name again this week. I can't remember. Anyway, there's a Bolshevik woman just after the revolution. She's in charge of male comrades. Someone makes a bloody sexist remark to her, and she pours bloody hot water over this person. It says, I don't know whether she used it in Russian, but basically, fuck off. You don't treat me like that. Right? That's what we want. I'm not advocating, by the way, people going around pouring water over people or the rest of it, but we want people empowered. That's the point. We want a situation where people demand respect. This is not a situation where we're viewing it as legitimate. People come out with sexist comments. Yes, we want to challenge sexist comments. Men should do it and women should do it, but women should feel empowered to do it because they are empowered. That's the point we're trying to get over in Left Unity. So we put forward a code of conduct, right? Not a situation of where we're infantilising the membership as if we have to have a police force to protect us from rude words or nasty comments. No, we want a situation where we all are able to deal with nasty or pointed comments. And what I find amazing with these comrades is, weren't they at the first conference which rejected the Safe Spaces policy, but unfortunately accepted the 50-50 gender quota stuff, right? And what were some of their comrades shouting out to us? Nazis, fascists, bringing in the right. And I don't want them banned from doing that, but they don't realise their own hypocrisy when they shout at us, when they barrack us, when they insult us. From our point of view, we've got thick enough skins to turn around and say, no, that's not the case. No, we aren't rightists. We're actually left-wing and we're communists and we're proud of it. Okay, that's our response to these comrades. Anyway,